You're watching HCAM TV.
Welcome to Hopkinton Coffee Break, your home for current community talk with Patricia Duart, Darlene Hayes, and Connie Wright.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Hopkinton Coffee Break. So what is today? Thursday, June 4th, 2020. And it's probably one of the most tumultuous times that I've ever experienced in my life. Today, I'm with my besties, Connie and Darlene, and we're going to just talk about the events of the day in terms of how we're feeling, how we're coping. And I don't need to remind anyone, but it just, it helps to remember how heavy things are right now. So at the risk of, I just want to share. So recently, the killing in Minneapolis obviously has been the catalyst that sparked everything. But in succession, there's been that incident. There was the individual that was killed by the armed residents in Georgia just a few days prior. There was the woman in Central Park, the white woman who weaponized the police by threatening a bird watcher because of something related to her dog. She didn't want to, minor things in that case that could have had a life-altering effect on that individual who she called the police on. These racist-oriented situations have gotten the attention of all Americans, and we're seeing some reactions all over the place. In addition to that, we're in the midst of a pandemic still, that this virus is threatening all of our lives, and disproportionately Black and Brown for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with inherent physiology. So this is a heavy time, and we're all feeling it in different ways. I haven't seen Connie and Darlene since in recent days, so it's wonderful to see you and wish we could hug. But this is how I want to open the floor and just see how we're doing.
I appreciate that, Patricia, and I think I flipped this around. I sent you a text last night. I don't know if you got it, because I sit here and I don't think it's. I don't get to be. It's indulgent upon me to be upset. I understand I live in privilege. I sit back and think about how you had to tell your son, if he was ever pulled over by a police car, what to do and how to act. Or just, things that never occurred to me, that going out jogging, he lives in New York City, where can he jog by himself? In white suburbia, can a Black man go jog by himself? Mm-hmm. These things that, so I look, and having you ask me how I feel, I am deflated, I am frustrated, I don't know how to concern, but this is not about me. And I've been reading some of those articles about, this needs to stay in the conversation about what has become so entrenched institutionally in our country that has this extreme and terrible impact on all of our people of color. Absolutely. And I get so upset when people say, I don't see color. I won't say the word I want to say. We're on TV.
Well, hold on.
Of course we do. Yeah. So anyway,
yes. Thought. So yes, because there's a lot of emotions there. Absolutely. Yes. And I have some too, for sure. Darlene, how are you doing this morning?
I internalize things really hard, I guess. So it actually affects my health. Monday and Tuesday, I didn't sleep. I felt good after we did. I saw you Sunday. We, a bunch of us, Sheila Zarba Campbell had spurred a very, very peaceful vigil on the Common, and left there feeling good that, our community is good. went out, did an errand or two, came home, and then the Boston news, and then the news continues, and just not sleeping. I've struggled with migraines and everything else the last few days, and it just, I don't know.
But
I haven't seen
that's
like that since I was a really, really little kid. And I mean, I'm like first, second grade, I remember seeing things on the news in the background, but never thinking it affects our community or affects me.
Absolutely. Well, you know,
But that's a privilege. I sit here and I go, of course I'm deflated and I'm affected, but that's a privilege for me to feel. I can go about my life and I am really not impacted. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
And don't beat yourself up too much, Connie, in terms of that, because you know, I actually, and I, you know, this is not about me feeling privileged, but I feel fortunate. I feel fortunate to live in Hopkinton. You know, as an African American, as a Black woman, as a person who raised her family here. It's been a wonderful community. We all know that. But that did not prevent us from preparing our children because we are Black. Just to say that this issue has been forever for African Americans in particular. I mean, honestly, since slavery, how to be among white America. Not only how to be safe and to stay alive, and I'm not exaggerating, obviously we know this, but also to be effective, let alone to be successful. So there's been these steps, and all families have to learn these things. I mean, you teach your kids how to be effective and successful in their lives. We have that added layer because we have to navigate the fact that you know, there is inherent bias in individuals and in systems. And I think what's going on now, and I'm not condoning violence and rioting at all, but there's, you know, there's an old saying, and I can't quote it exactly. Somebody said it on a call yesterday with one of the organizations I work with, that when the warmth of the village doesn't, you know, support you, at some point you just light a match. There, you know, it's a horrible, kind of a graphic thing, but there's a lot of frustration out there.
That's the word the frustration, and I get it, and the same old. I feel like we're in Groundhog's Day. You know, we had Trayvon Martin, we had, you know, and what has happened? Here we are again, and I'm going, nothing has changed, and I just I sit back and I go, you know, I appreciate. I know I live in privilege. Darlene and I live in privilege, and we all have implicit bias, and we need to understand that bias, and then use and understand that to shift and alter how we behave, what we do. This includes how we hire, how we shop, how we
and how we educate our children. School systems are rife with bias. Oh my gosh. Despite their overt intentionalities to be, you know, they love children, teachers, and administrators, but the system itself, you know, and you don't really know it or even see it unless you are on the other side of it. There, you know, to your point, and that other analogy probably sounded too harsh, but there's a video I would highly recommend people watching. Trevor Noah, the guy who took over for the Daily Show, is African. He is South African, Black, biracial, and so eloquent. And he has a video out where he's talking about these issues. And the one takeaway from that is when you think about all the riots and the protests are different than the riots. Most of the protests are peaceful, but they're large and they're out there. And then they're bad characters who are, you know, doing terrible things. That's a small, tiny percentage, but it's scary nonetheless. But he talks about the social contract. You know, you grow up believing if you do the right thing, if you obey the laws, if you are respectful, all these normal things, plus, you know, the actual laws that are on the books, that you will be fine. And when that contract is broken and all of America sees it, it changes things. And I think that's what we're feeling. At least I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, it's like I'm feeling pissed off that we're in the midst of this global pandemic, and that all this, I'm gonna say, other crap is going on around, and how it's affecting people around me, how it's affecting the world, then being scared, and then also being just immensely sad. It's just that you're helpless in all this. And, I was seeing some other, posts on social media and stuff, because June is also Pride Month, and knowing stories of friends who've been extremely persecuted for their personal beliefs and things that
not personal beliefs, but
and
who they are
happen to them, and these are people who live amongst our community that are white, and those things that I've heard that have happened to them when they were in college, when they're growing up, or even like when someone realizes, like when they introduce each other and say, "Oh, and here's my wife," and like, "Oh, don't you mean to say partner?" And like, no, we're married.
Still, people are saying that.
Look down on them and stuff. It's like, come off it. Aren't we better than this? And it's just made me so sad.
Yeah.
Well, and sadly, Darlene, I agree with you in the sense that sadly we aren't better than this. And somehow I believed, 10 years ago we had made great strides. And I find that today we're no further along than 1968 when Martin Luther King was murdered. Or,
Well, yeah, because if it weren't for cell phones, we would know about it. I mean, I would know about all these horrors. I would know about some of them just because, having a different network, perhaps. But now, nothing is filtered. Everyone can document what's going on, and that's what's happening. And I think it's raising awareness. And I think that all the combination of all of these issues that came up, racial issues, and I don't want to lose sight of that, because that's what this catalyst has been about. I mean, it's like opened up the Pandora's box of all of our ills and challenges in America. But this racist supremacist undertone of system that we have in America that lends itself to these kinds of things that are happening before our eyes, where certain officers feel the need that they can take a life because they can. Not obviously not the vast majority, but too many individual incidences of this around the country.
I mean, I know Sunday after the vigil, I had posted a picture, and it was you were in it, Patricia, and a few of us holding signs, and I ended up making it my cover picture on Facebook. But the when the picture went up, a lot of it was like very positive comments from people in our community, but there were a couple people who really had negative comments that live in our community or surrounding. And I know some conversations on other private Facebook groups have gone pretty much off the rails on this, because it was a Black Lives Matter event, because it was affecting a Black life, why people were protesting. And it led in to I know Connie saw some of the discourse that was on my page, and that kind of just back. It's like, really? You're my neighbor. And you think, and this person really is my neighbor. It was like a quarter mile from me.
I find that it is so deeply entrenched, and I don't mean to single out, but I find a lot of white men feel very threatened, and yet they are not being threatened, but they have something and they don't want to give it up. And I am stereotyping, and that's not fair. But when I see statements like all lives matter, I'm going, then either you get it and you're agitating, or you just don't get it. This is not that all lives don't matter, but we have too long permitted, and it's not just about the killings of Black people, it's about the whole systemic system and how it is a system that genuinely is rigged. When you think of college graduates back when we graduated, I'll raise my hand. I graduated in 1981. And at the time, you can do the math, everybody. You can see how old I am.
I got a few years on you, baby.
I don't know, but
77.
okay. But my point
And the baby over here, Darlene. Anyway, go ahead.
When I graduated from college,
I'm
and
not
where
that
I
much-
graduated,
I'm younger, but not that much.
but my point is, when I graduated from college, my graduating class was proportionate in both gender and people of color, and the whole, it was. I went to a school where gay rights were being discussed, so the whole spectrum of diversity existed. However, here we are. You guys can do the math.
Yes.
Almost,
X
almost
amount of
40
years later.
And my point is, we do not have that same proportion of people in the C-suite, teaching as professors, leaders in politics, so that alone tells you that as a society, all these people graduated, had the same potential, but what were the avenues and lanes that people took or didn't take, and why aren't they at these levels? And I can only speak for myself, but I know, I was pushing a rock uphill, having children and being a professional woman, and yet I was in a way too stupid, and I just sort of did my own thing and feel I got there. But there were choices I made because it wasn't as accessible. And mine was, I still live in privilege. I cannot even fathom. I didn't have to think about for my safety. So it's beyond just safety, but safety is the big tipping point in all this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and my takeaway from that too is we all have our struggles, as women, as people, as, Darlene was pointing out, LGBTQ. I mean, we all have a diversity factor, and the intersectionality is important, that we're all not just one thing. We're a combination of things. But this harshness is around race in America because it is so readily identified, and it's race and it's skin color. Mm-hmm. So when a person on the street is being harassed, I'll be honest with you, it is less likely to happen to me than it is to a brown skinned African American person. And I don't, that's just the reality. That's the visual, that's the quick snapshot. That doesn't mean it won't. But there's a level
because you don't look necessarily black, is what you're saying.
My dad's still convinced she's Italian, by the way.
I know everyone. People think I'm Latina, and then it's just. But that's what a Black American looks like because of the mixture of European and African throughout the 400 years, since slavery. Right. One day we'll talk family history, and there's some interesting tidbits there in terms of why, but, and not all bad, not all horrible. Actually, there's a love story back in there, which is,
Patricia, you made a comment somewhere last week, and it was about how people don't make eye contact or say hi. And then you at the graduation parade, and you had gone for a walk, and then shared about saying hi to people. I wanted you to share about that.
Okay, so it's funny. I said one tiny thing that white people could do is say hi to a Black person on the street. Look them in the eye. You don't have to start conversation, or it's just look a person in the eye, smile, and say hello. That never happens, and that doesn't happen to me. Or and yet all of my friends and everybody here chimed online. Yeah, I do, and I agree. I'm sure you do. But the majority
I say hi to everybody.
I know. But the majority, and that's just, to me, I suggested it because it might be a way of acknowledging and connecting with a person of, that you wouldn't normally say hi to. But let me just finish what Darlene was asking me to talk about. So I put that out there, and then I just, I would just recheck my own sanity around that, because I've experienced this my entire life, everywhere, including here. White people say hello to me if they know me. If they don't, they don't. And I don't know if that's in New England, people are less friendly, whatever. But at the graduation parade in Hopkinton on the whatever day that was,
Last Saturday.
Saturday. So we were parked at
Which
Main
was
Street
fabulous,
Auto.
by the way.
It was gorgeous and a wonderful time, a beautiful day. I walked from Main Street Auto to CVS to get a cold drink of water and bring some back. And there were families clustered down the sidewalk. I kept a social distance, walked on the edge on the street, and I looked at people and I said, "Hello, how are you?" And of course, I have a mask on, as did they. I'm saying hello. There must have been 5 or 6 or 7 pockets of people. Only one group responded to me. Now, nobody said hi to me initially. I walked up, they turned their faces. I don't know why that is. And I said hello, and people just totally ignored me. I am not kidding. And I smiled. I'm like, see, it's true. One family did. They said hello. One lady, I looked at her right now. How are you? She turned her head.
Wow.
So it just is. I don't know why.
Well,
it was just sobering when you told that. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's just and that's so minor to me in the grand scheme of safety.
I know.
And access, that
but
it's like whatever.
It's all part of that platform that's insidious in our culture, that then leads to this awful. I mean, I just, yeah, I hear you, and I feel deflated, because I feel stuff that I think I understand and attempt to.
All I can say is I think you, Connie, Darlene, many, many other people that we all know and love, white people, are beacons of light, are aware, educated, empathetic, and in your various arenas, professionally and personally, and in your community civic work, that you make a difference just because you're showing up. I mean, we all are doing that in different ways. And, I love you guys for that and appreciate you, of course.
But we have to do more. We have to do more, and I'm proud of my children. I'm proud of your children, Patricia.
Yeah. All of our kids, we're awesome moms. But your son, okay, and you shared a picture. Your
right.
son, my son's age.
Yes, and they grew up together, friends, etc. And I shared it as the dichotomy of the wonderful vigil on our green. But I said, we live in a town of privilege where, the police all know us. And I shared the picture. My son participated in the protest in Charlotte, and he worked very hard to keep it peaceful. And he would go amongst the crowd and friends and people he didn't know and say, look, no, don't turn over things. Don't be violent. If you're going to do this, you got to go home. This destroys the message. And he was attempting to be a buffer between the police and the crowd. And the police had announced at 10 or 10:30, this is no longer allowed. This is an illegal protest. You all need to go home. And the crowd was back about 20 yards. And a friend took a video of all this, cell phones. And there is my son with 2 other Caucasian gentlemen negotiating with the police, telling them, we're going to help you. We're trying to get them to disperse. Give us a little time. The crowd is 20 yards back. Someone from the crowd threw a water bottle. Is that right? No. But is it going to kill anybody? The police are so armored in gear. It bounced off of them. At that moment, they fired the rubber bullets, point blank range, into my son. 4 of them. What? Was he hurt? Well, he's got huge welts. He didn't, the good news is none of them hit his head. But, so I just say, we had the privilege of our town. Right. And I'm not, and he was not mad at the police. He said they were doing their job. No. But if the
Yeah.
police had taken a knee, had walked them on the protesters and said, we're with you. But this whole, it just,
This whole militarization, but that's where I see the glimmers of hope. I applaud the police that are, taking a knee and joining the protest and finally stepping up and saying and being against police brutality vocally. Maybe they are personally and everything else, but it doesn't matter unless you're willing to do something inside the organization and check your coworkers, your brothers and sisters in blue, or however they refer to themselves.
yeah.
That's what I'm expecting of good police officers, and frankly, nothing less.
And a huge,
Yeah,
oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
darling.
A huge shout out to Officer Phil. The police were alerted to be there for this peaceful protest on Sunday. The chief picked Officer Phil to be there. He blocked it off. But I ran into him, and nearly ran into him, seriously. Detail down the
Well, that's
street
not good.
the day after. And he was laughing, and he's like, so when I was going to go by, he stopped. He's like, okay, now, he goes, I was at your event yesterday, and now you're trying to run me over. And we were joking. He goes, I want to tell you, he goes, that event was impactful. He goes, and it was really well done. And he goes, there was no trouble. He goes, I'm glad you guys did it. Now, this was totally Sheila's event. I helped promote it a bit and invited some people, but this, one of our officers felt like it was impactful to him and that it was good, left something, and I'm glad I didn't drive over.
And do bear in mind, we absolutely need in our country officers of the law who keep us as a civil society. But there is a problem with what I call tone at the top. And I mean, it's within towns, within cities, at our federal level. And when you have a tone at the top, and I take this from my Sarbanes-Oxley years and the requirement of CEOs and CFOs to be responsible for their companies and their companies' safety and security of assets. And I translate this over to, and I see it throughout our society. When you have the tone at the top, absolutely embracing and being inclusive and understanding the disparity and believing, then you have a very different environment with your officers of the law.
Right.
But and even your citizens, and the fact that we've given voice to citizens who, frankly, I'm appalled they even think and behave that way. Their hatred is immense. But we're running out of time here, guys. We've got 2 minutes.
I know. So yeah.
I'm sorry. I could go for an hour. Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you.
Oh, well, we're all in this together. Thank you, Darlene.
There is another peaceful protest that's being organized this weekend, Sunday on the Common. It's being organized by Carly Grant, Jessica Zent, and Muriel Kramer. I won't be able to be there, but if people want to be there, they make signs. You stand out. I did want to give a shout out to Kevin Scheingold. He was an individual at last week's protest who asked the crowd just to quietly chant for 9 minutes. I can't
9
breathe.
minutes.
And it was probably the most impactful, and I've now gotten to know him better over the last couple of days and and became associated with him. The other thing I want to reach out to people, and you're not going to be able to read this very well, but this is and it comes up backwards, is again, we have an election on June 29th coming up. If you want to vote by mail, just apply for an absentee ballot, and the clerk will get you a ballot out to you.
Got to do it soon.
Yep.
And mail it, and the ballots have to be received no later than 4 o'clock on June 29th. Election hours are staying the same, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And just encourage everyone, even during this pandemic, there's been access made for everyone to still vote.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And as we wrap up this, voting is super important, and at the local level, at every level, certainly. But the issues of the day are not separate from the beliefs and values of the candidates and that are running at our local levels, and that's where we have the most impact.
It all starts local.
It all starts local.
It all starts here.
I definitely want to thank you